History, history. Can you see, little boy, what you mean to me? Can you see how sweet our love has long grown to be? It's time to see the happiness I feel inside of me. Knowing one thing, darling, this love will always be two lovers, history. Ain't that two lovers, history? Peaches and cream.
Hello and thanks for joining us on the History Bhoys Abroad episode 19. Tonight's episode will see me take the mantle as host, and I'm joined by another boy abroad to take us through the long career of a man known as the Bear. But before we do that, I'm going to let my co-host Gary introduce himself and tell us a little bit about where he is, his Celtic credentials and so forth. So Gary, if you can take it on from here.
Thank you. I'm from Glasgow originally. I've been living abroad for 5 years now. I was first in South Korea for 2 years. Then I went travelling in South America. Went to the World Cup. Worked my way up towards Colombia, where I am now. And I love the place so much that I never left. I think it was more the fear of going back to Glasgow more than anything. But yeah, so that's my story. I'm a school teacher out here, but a Celtic fan, based just much the same as anyone. If you're from a Celtic family in Glasgow, you're only ever going to support one team, and the team for me was Celtic.
Excellent. Whereabouts in Colombia?
I'm in Bogota.
Right.
Bogota, the capital.
Excellent. And what's it like living there? Are there any CSCs, any sort of like Celtic setups?
There's not actually. There was one in Korea. There's the Seoul Celtic Supporters Club in Korea. But out here, no, not so much. I think anywhere you find with a lot of Irish people, you tend to find CSCs or a lot of Scottish people for whatever reason. But no, in Bogota there's not that many. I've got a couple of mates also from Glasgow who are Celtic fans. But yeah, that's about it. No, probably not enough to have a CSC as such.
Yeah, no, it's kind of similar to where I am. But I tend to frequent the Madrid CSC, which is the Triskel Tavern. But anyway, so let's get to it. Basically, the things have changed a little bit with the podcast, with Graham being too busy to carry on. He's actually doing a PhD in his spare time, which is quite a feat, and he works full time as well. So he's with that, and he's going to be coming back occasionally to be a guest. But I'm going to be taking over for the time being anyway. So we're going to talk about Roy Aitken, and Roy Aitken was chosen as he's kind of an oft forgotten captain. Played for Celtic for 15 years, which I didn't really know before my research. I'm unsure about you, Gary, if you actually knew he was with us for 15 years. So basically, when I first started realising...
I knew...
Carry on, mate.
Sorry, just to add a point on that, I knew he was with the club, but you don't really think it's that long.
Yeah.
Until you actually see it and you begin to see season by season. I knew he came through, but what kind of surprised me was finding out how quickly he became a regular on the team.
Aye, that's something that I found out. He is established. He's playing football for Celtic age 16, and by age 17 and 18, he's like the vice captain. So it's reasons like this that we want to do this podcast. We're not really want to really talk about the Lubos and the Nakas just yet. We want to talk about guys that people might not really know about. And Roy Aitken was at Celtic from 1975 to 1990, and he sort of spans the period of the Quality Street gang right through to the dark periods. Obviously the centenary year, which is the part that you're going to cover, just to let people know that 15 seasons was a massive amount of research having to be done. I really hope that we do it justice here. I'm going to do the first 8 seasons, and then Gary's going to take us up to 1990, and then we can talk a little bit about what happened when he left Celtic. But I'll just get straight to it and start talking about when he first came to Celtic. It was approximately 1975. It was the same month that Jock Stein had that car crash where he was returning from a holiday, flying into Prestwick or something like that, and he was driving back to his house, and he was in a car crash. It was quite a serious car crash. So Jock Stein, obviously being Jock Stein, the main man at Celtic, couldn't manage us for the 1975-1976 season. And so Sean Fallon, who was his assistant at the time, the Iron Man, Sean Fallon, covered for him. And Roy came from Celtic's boys club, and I think he's a sole coach, local lads, and it's the same season that Jinky actually left. And the year before this, in 1974-75, Celtic came third, so we're not exactly sparkling. So the 10th of September, he makes his debut versus Stenhousemuir in the League Cup, which is an away game. Celtic win 2-0. He's only 16 years old. He comes off the bench 13 minutes from time to replace a guy called Shuggy Edvaldsen. Have you ever heard of him, Gary?
Aye, but I think his name's Johannes or something daft like that. But I don't know where Shuggy came from. Was it very close to Scotland?
I think that's just a bit of a colloquialism, like classic Glasgow chat, just to give him a random Scottish nickname when his name was actually Johannes Edvaldsen. Like he's a guy that I've sort of took an interest in with regards to doing a podcast on him somewhere down the line, because he seemed to be a bit of a cult figure and like contributed quite a lot to Celtic, and I'm pretty sure that the story about him signing for Celtic is quite mysterious. No one really knows like how we managed to hear about him, but he came from some nowhere team and then went on to play for Celtic for about 4 or 5 years, but I digress. So the team that the day that Roy Aitken made his debut was Latchford, McGrain, Lynch, McNamara Senior, which is Jackie's dad, Connolly, Edvaldsen, obviously Aitken comes on, Glavin, Wilson, Dalglish and Callaghan, and Lennox. And the scorers of that game were Bobby Lennox and Kenny Dalglish. So he's came into a team with quite esteemed company. The return leg of this game, which was in the League Cup, signalled the end for George Conley. I'm not sure if you heard the previous episode, Gary, but we covered George Conley in episode 18. Obviously, this is episode 19, and this game was like the last game that George Conley pretty much played for Celtic. So there's a little bit of an overlap there. So that's kind of it until the 21st of February. From the start of the season until the 21st of February, he doesn't really get anything at all. But Celtic beat Aberdeen 1-0 away, and Aitken makes his full team debut with a starting defence. He's 17 years old. Now, if you think about being 17 years old and playing football for Celtic, but not only that, being put into like a defensive position, it seems to be quite a rare occurrence. Would you agree?
I would say, yeah. I mean, I think a parallel can be drawn perhaps with Kieran Tierney.
Yeah.
You've got to have something special about you to be able to come into a team like Celtic at that age, I'd say.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I don't think...
Yeah. Carry on, mate.
No, I'm just saying, like, to be able to come in at 17 and basically never leave the team, only a handful of players can actually do that. I don't know, McStay's, Aitken, there isn't many.
It's like a generational player, isn't it? Like you have each generation tends to have, like every decade, there's maybe one guy that comes through and sticks around for long enough to really make a name for himself. You have your Paul McStays. We've now got Scott Brown never came through, but we've got Kieran Tierney, Peter Grant, guys like that, Tommy Burns. So they're kind of generational players. But like the game that we played was a 1-0 win away to Aberdeen, but it was like an almost nothing game. But one thing that popped out during the research of this was something, I don't know if you know this, but I'm just going to hit you with it anyway. So Jackie McNamara Senior announced in a magazine interview that he was a communist, and he apparently said that I am a communist.
He's a communist.
Aye. I'm a communist. Football is a sick business. The management pulls all the strings and everyone looks out for himself. Celtic and Rangers, take a shy and you see the hate in the faces. It's a shame. Celtic Park, not many politically conscious at all. In for the wages, and that's all. So basically, he was out selling like the Soviet Weekly in Easterhouse as well. Apparently, like, was he a member
of the Green Brigade?
No, I don't think so. I think Green Brigade was like after that. To be honest, mate, I'm not sure.
Ah, was it? Right.
I think so. Right. So it's pretty mad to think Jackie McNamara's dad was a commie. It's the sort of reasons why I like doing this, because you find this mad absolute nonsense out there. But just to fast forward a wee bit, Celtic are top of the league at the end of February, and Roy plays quite a few games. 3rd of March, Celtic are in the European Cup Winners' Cup third rounds against FSV Zwickau of East Germany, which is during, obviously, this tumultuous divide that happened in Germany through these times. The first game was 1-1 Celtic Park, and Roy started, but he was to blame for the goal. He got absolutely roasted by a defender. Like, 17 years old, you don't really expect him to do too well in these games, I guess. Kind of go easy on them. The return leg, as a little side note, Celtic signed Johnny Doyle, who would go on to be a really prominent player for Celtic and someone that really caught my eye with regards to doing another podcast on him. He was signed.
Absolutely.
He was signed at the airport. Like, he came from the air, I think, and he came to the airport and they agreed all the stuff there, and he signed. He flew with Celtic to East Germany, but he never featured. So there you go. There's a little extra thing for you, but. The most interesting, the reason I'm actually telling this anecdote, and I'm ripping the arse out it, but bear with me, it's worth waiting. Basically, Roy's 17 years old. He's going to Eastern Germany. We know that the history of Eastern Germany and all this, and we're talking 1976. 1976.
Yes. Because
Roy Aitken is 17 years old, he needs a guardian to go with him. Any idea what the solution was? What was the solution to get him to go?
No, go for it.
Celtic had to literally adopt him.
Jesus. Celtic. Who?
I'm not sure. I would ideally Jock Stein would have been his dad. That would have been the
right.
That would have been the
well, that's the ideal situation.
That's what I'm saying.
For any Celtic fan.
But yeah, so he was adopted by Celtic. They signed the papers. They passed him off. They said that's fine, and then we go. He becomes an adoptee of Celtic, which is quite a nice notion. But the game's not entirely that great. We had a goal wrongly chopped off near the end of the game. Celtic were quite depleted selection-wise. We had a defender playing up front for us, Roddy McDonald. He's the one that scored the chopped off goal. And I just want to point out that Sean Fallon is the manager during this time. He's been a guy who's been in the background for so long. He's came to the forefront, obviously, because Jock is unwell. But so anyway, I'll carry on. Celtic end March, the month of March, with just 4 games played, 2 in Europe. We're top of the league with 1 point behind the Monkeys. 28 games played. I think in this time you get 2 points for a win. 36 games a season. It's not quite like this, like now with 38 points, 38 games and 3 points. It's slightly different. But Dalglish is absolutely ripping it up. Dalglish is doing exceptionally well. But Roy is now a first team regular. April we play 6 games, but the form really, really dips. But Roy starts all the games. A 1-1 draw against Aberdeen, we have the chance to go top, but it's notable for dodgy referees chopping off last-minute goals, to the point that Sean Fallon actually spoke about it after the game, and I'm pretty sure, while he was quite a strong, silent type, a mild-mannered guy, it took quite a lot for him to come out and say something. But the reason I'm telling you these little tidbits is because Tommy Burns made his debut in this game. And then the next game, we're chasing the title, but Hibs beat us 2-0. And that's the end of the title. So in May we play 2 games. One is a Hearts 1-0 away loss. And the reason I'm telling you this is because the fans were fighting. Everyone was fighting each other. I think Celtic fans get into the Hearts end, Hearts fans get into the Celtic end, and it was just a big stramash. But Jock Stein was given it's probably accurate. Jock Stein was given the green light to come back to Celtic and take over after quite a disastrous season. But Roy played 15 games, aged 16 into 17. Dalglish scored 32, but we won absolutely nothing. So that's kind of like the start of Roy Aitken's career. That's the first season of 15. So I'm just going to quickly jump into the next season and we'll get talking. The team for that season...
So just before you do, sorry, a point about that season, even though I remember reading Stein, a book about Stein, and apparently, officially, he came back at the end of the season, but he'd been visiting the training ground, and he was just obviously his own workaholic type of mind. He was back trying to influence games and giving team talks way before he should have, you know.
Yeah, I got that impression as well, that he was kind of sort of, don't want to say like the puppet master, because that would be a little bit snide, but he was kind of pulling the strings, and I can understand because he is the guy in charge. He's got the contract there. He's the man that's going to go straight back into that job. He built that team, so he has a right to sort of interfere if we can call it that. It's not even interfering when it's his team. But so he's back for this 76-77 season. I'll talk you through the team. Approximately Kenny Dalglish, Alfie Conn, Johnny Doyle, Tommy Burns, Paul Wilson, Johannes Edvaldsen, Roy Aitken, Joe Craig, Andy Lynch, Roddy McDonald, Pat Stanton, Danny McGrain and Peter Latchford. There's a little moment of uncertainty at this point because Jock Stein comes back and Sean Fallon is demoted to the chief scout, which caused a little bit of friction. I listened to the Celtic. We spoke previously. We both listened to. You listen to the Celtic Underground, don't you?
Certainly, yeah.
Right. Okay. So they spoke about that recently about Kenny Dalglish and how a lot of the players, when they had St Anthony on, they were talking about he's got a book called Kenny of the Celtic, and they were talking about during this time when Sean was demoted, like a lot of the Celtic players were really unhappy about that because he brought in a guy called Dave McPartland who came in. I think he might have even came from Dunfermline. Something tells me. So like Sean Fallon, who was the manager the season before, has just been bumped down to like a scout level. So that kind of sets the tone.
Yeah, I think for that though, it's maybe. I mean, I have no idea, but maybe Steve was just thinking that he's obviously getting a bit older. Fallon was obviously he'd been there for X amount of years as well. Maybe just needed a bit of fresh blood, maybe a younger guy in there as well.
Yeah, no, maybe that's it. Maybe that's what it was because Fallon was there for a long, long time. Sean Fallon is. I mean, that's a long podcast as well. But I'd like to think that these guys we would get round to doing podcasts on these guys. But I'll carry on with Roy's story. So in August, Jock Stein comes in and puts them straight back into the reserves. We know that the reserves back then were of a higher standard, and a lot of these players that came through were all part of the reserves, and they would play, like if Celtic played Aberdeen on the Saturday, they would play Aberdeen on the Friday, the reserves, and it was like a real league. So throughout the month of August, we played loads of League Cup fixtures, which was the League Cup group stage thing, which we have now. We topped the group with 10 points, and Roy played the final game. But after a time out in September, Roy started a 2-2 draw with Hearts and followed that up with a League Cup game away to Arbroath. We win 1-0, but he's playing in central midfield. One of the things that I noticed about Roy Aitken, that he played maybe 5 different positions for Celtic, and he never really complained. I never read any complaints. I never read any negative things about him, actually. Did you come across anything?
Not in terms of that, no. He's always been very... he's always spoke well about Celtic, from what I can see in his interviews and so on. But I think one thing I did notice, and obviously and you've got your era and I've obviously got the later era where he was at Celtic, I think McNeil preferred him in midfield. I don't know why, but it just seems to be that the times he spends in midfield, obviously when he first came in he was doing that as well, but McNeil played him a lot in that kind of defensive mid role and let people like McStay and stuff like that go and do their thing.
Yeah. Are you talking about McNeil the second stint? Because obviously McNeil comes in the early 80s.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
That's fine because like under McNeil and like his first stint, he does tend to play midfield. I'm not entirely sure it's defensive mid. I think it might just be central midfield. But I came across examples of Aitken, right back, centre half, left back, midfield, defensive mid. And
yeah, I think he's just, from what I can see, he's just one of those guys that probably managers trust. He seems to be a dependable type of guy who would just get on with it, which would be a manager's dream.
It's funny because like he seems to be quite a low key guy, like a big presence on the pitch, but quite low key off it and like low maintenance. The sort of like perfect player, as you say. But I'll carry on with what I've got here. I'll just fly through. He gets to play in Europe. He's still only 17. We get put out off Wisla Krakow. I'll move into October. He's now been given a few caps for the Scotland under-21s in October 1976, 1977. I didn't really come across any like boardroom rifts. It's quite a peaceful time for Celtic. Throughout like the other podcasts that we've done, like I would come across incidents where there was like rifts. Things were happening in the background that were affecting things on the pitch and in the stands. But throughout this time, like there's one incident near the end of like what I've been doing. I'm doing up until like 83. Like there's maybe one incident in like 8 years that I came across that kind of was a negative thing towards the boardroom, but we'll come to that. So basically, we're into September, I think, and we round off the month with a 2-0 win over Motherwell. Celtic finish the month second to Dundee United, and Dalglish is the captain. He's scoring for fun. The Celtic team at this time really did rely on Dalglish, Doyle and McGrain. And these two guys, McGrain obviously and Dalglish, were prominent captains for Celtic. Like, I don't know if you know, but the sequence goes: Dalglish was a captain, Dalglish moves to Liverpool quite soon. McGrain takes over the captaincy when McGrain's injured. Roy Aitken steps in. McGrain steps down. Roy Aitken takes over. So, like, I think being influenced, like being in the team with these two guys, do you think like that had an influence on him? And I just also want to ask you more of a generic question. What sort of values or skills do you think a captain should have?
Well, to answer the first question, I think you'd have to be pretty dense if you're not a team with players of that calibre and not learning something from them. The only other, obviously, Dalglish is well before my time, but it seems to be the modern day comparison is always Larsson. It's just, it tends to be Larsson was the modern day version of what Dalglish was to Celtic fans in the 70s. And I think obviously somebody like McGrain, just obviously I think he contracted diabetes, didn't he? He got diabetes.
McGrain, yeah, he was diabetic.
Yeah, but so obviously that kind of hampered him in the later part of his career. But by any stretch of the imagination, anyone you speak to who saw him in the 70s say he could have walked into any team in the world. So when you think that you've got players of that calibre playing for Celtic, especially if you're a young boy coming through, you've got to take that on, surely.
Yeah.
In terms of actually being a captain, I think a lot gets made about a captain's got to be somebody who's shouting and motivating. I think it depends on the person. I don't think you can be, and I'd say the same about managers, I don't think you can be a different type of person as a manager as your actual personality. And somebody like Aitken, who's obviously, he's just naturally loud, he's naturally a leader. And that's one of the things that I see when you see a lot of people speaking about Aitken, is one of the main things that he had was his motivational skills.
Yeah.
And so that fitted his personality. And then you get somebody like Paul McStay, who's no, you can tell he was a quiet guy, he was not a shouter. I think if someone like that were to start shouting and start trying to motivate people in that way, people would see through them. So I think this is a case that you've got to find your voice, but you've got to be natural as well. Yeah. And I think somebody like, you want to set an example as a captain. I think people like Aitken really embodied that.
Yeah. It's a really interesting point that you raised there about the different types of captains. Like, instantly thought of the Hugo Lloris, the guy that plays for Tottenham. I think like he's a goalkeeper.
Spurs,
He doesn't like. I don't watch a lot of him, but he doesn't seem to be the most vocal guy, and he's playing in a position where he can't influence further up the pitch. But anyway, that's a conversation for another time. So yeah, I'll move on. And obviously, I think, as you say, like, Roy has to be a sort of sponge throughout this period, because he's learning from Dalglish, Doyle, McGrain. He's surrounded by quality and surrounded by like men. So November is
strong personalities.
Yeah.
Strong personalities there.
Exactly.
And that's the thing as well. Just to go back to that point, I think it depends on obviously what the team needs as well. There are certain times where you see a team. For example, you had Lambert, who was captain during O'Neill's teams, but I think that's a team that doesn't need a captain.
Yeah.
And when you get people like Lennon, Sutton, Hart, those players don't really need lead. I mean, they'll do it naturally. But there are some times, and there are some teams, especially obviously if the team's a bit younger, where you might need someone. And I think that's what you see, obviously, when you go into the kind of later part of Aitken's career. And one of the big things about him when he left was that he left around about the same time as Burns and so on. And there was a lot of the big personalities leaving, and a lot of the kind of the negative play of the early 90s could be put down to the fact that there just wasn't enough men and not enough leaders in the team.
Yeah, that's a good point. Again, that's something that's like worthy of a whole episode, like the comparison of the two different types of captains, and also like what really happened to Celtic in that 90s. We know that something the other side of the river was partly to do with that, but we'll move on anyway. So November, we played the League Cup final, which we were pretty good at it. But we quite a disappointing start to the month. We lose the League Cup final to Aberdeen. We were favourites. It was the 13th season in a row we'd been in the final, and Celtic fans were in the Hun End for some reason at Hampden. The game went to extra time, but we still lost. But the game of the season followed that, and it was a 4-3 win at Tynecastle. It's always a good place to go and get it right up those bastards. I was going to swear, but those bastards. So basically, Hearts were 2-0 up in 10 minutes. The guy that scored the 2 goals actually got a hat-trick this day, but Celtic brought it back and won 4-3. So it's quite similar to the Motherwell game recently, where we took it right. We kept pulling them back, and we had the drive. Bobby Lennox scored. Bobby Lennox is still around, and Bobby Lennox is still fucking around right up until pretty much 83. So a Lisbon Lion is still kicking around in the 80s. So I never knew that until today.
Really?
But so yeah, Roy played the entire match of this wonderful game of the season. Our good form continues. We beat Rangers, or the Huns, or the Deed Huns, or whatever, 1-0 at Mordor. Joe Craig scored a peach from outside the box, and Roy played a fantastic assist, and it was on his 18th birthday, so not a bad way to start your Celtic career, really, the foot of your career, getting an assist in that game. Bobby Lennox gets carried off with a broken leg. He gets fouled inside the box. He breaks his leg. He's been stretchered off. The referee changes his mind. The linesman said he was offside anyway and gave a free kick to Rangers. You believe that?
Was it? It doesn't surprise me, but was it John Gregg who broke his leg?
Aye, it was John Gregg. You're absolutely 100% correct. It was John Gregg, broke his leg. That rhymes, but anyway, John Gregg snapped. Aye, the bastard. He is a fucking bastard. He broke his leg. The referee stopped the game, had a look at the linesman. Linesman went other way, and he's like, "Sound, take him off anyway." It's like, it's just incredible, really. But anyway, it's not.
I wouldn't mind seeing a handshake for that game.
Aye, I'm pretty sure it would be quite a specific handshake, quite a specific one.
Certainly.
So we round off November with a 2-1 win against Kilmarnock. Joe Craig, again, assisted by the Bear. We're third in the league. We're behind Aberdeen and Dundee United. Dundee United and Aberdeen at this point are doing extremely well. Alex Ferguson comes into the frame with Aberdeen at some point, and they start winning leagues. Rangers really fall behind. So December, we win 1 and draw 1. We only played 2 matches, which if you compare it with now 9 games. We've still got 4 games left, and we've only got 10 days left of this month. We've got 4 games left to go currently. Roy is just getting picked time and time again now. January, 4 games, 3 wins in the league, 1 draw in the Scottish Cup. We beat the Huns 1-0. Roy had a great game, played against Fat Derek Johnston, had him in his back pocket, and he was given more freedom to push forward in the second half, which probably tells me that he was being played in midfield, which made a difference. We went top of the league by 1 point. And one player that stood out in these games is Pat Stanton, who was a guy, I think he was about 32 when Jock Stein signed him. Considered a masterstroke with hindsight, obviously. Someone who was worthy of an episode. He came in from Hibs out the cold and just played exceptionally well. He actually scored, not Pat Stanton, but we Celtic played Airdrie in a game. We beat them 5-0, and Joe Craig scored 4 goals, which never really happens. February we played 7, 1-6, drew 1, Ayr United in the Scottish Cup, but now we're actually doing teams. I'm not going to go into every game, but we're doing teams by 3, 4, 5 goals every game. And he gets his debut goal. Roy gets his debut goal against Partick Thistle, who were managed by Bertie Auld at the time, which was a 30-yard goal. Now this is going quite far back. The footage is not possible. I've been putting on like GIFs and stuff like that of the ones that I've found, but GIFs can only be made from videos that aren't encrypted and videos that are less than 15 minutes long. So, and videos that exist, some of these videos just don't exist. So, anyway, March we have a Scottish Cup replay. Aitken scores the third goal of a 3-1 win. Again, he's still 17 and he's scoring goals. He's playing the centre half occasionally. And this takes up to a game 2-2 against Rangers at Mordor, and it's extremely hostile to the point Jock Stein has to come on to the pitch to calm the fans down. Now, this game is arguably Aitken's finest 2 goals against Rangers, only 18 away in Mordor. And we took the lead, which was an easy tap in, and the second one is a peach. It was an amazing ball in from Johnny Doyle. I found the footage, but it was not happening. For like, the audio was really fucked, or I would have played it tonight, or I would have put a gif on. It was terrible. But he scored 2 extremely different goals. One was a striker's finish, and the other one was like a poacher's goal. So he seems to have this ability to be in the box at the right time, kind of.
So just on that point of the second goal, I always find that it's a bit of an iconic clip because the Huns have got all the scarves up, kind of like a walk-on type thing, and he scores and they all just drop, and it's beautiful.
It is
beautiful to see.
He seemed to have a knack of playing quite well against Rangers. He scored quite a few goals against Rangers in his time. I put one on Twitter today, and he took the ball from his own half and just beat about 4 men, and then went to play it through. I think it was McGarvey, sort of deflected back to him, and he rattled it in the corner. And it was a great finish. And
I always thought that was a weird goal, just because the way the ball comes back to him. You would think it's an instinctive just. But like a lot of his goals tend to be that. It tend to be him just breaking, kind of just like a Yusuf Ham type of way, and just careering up the park. Not much in terms of. And one of the threads that you'll see going through most people's opinions of him is that he's not the most technical of players, but he's just at times it's his energy and it's his will to make something happen. Actually, manages to make something happen, which is it's not something many players actually have, even very, very good players. So a lot of them can't change the pace of a game.
Yeah,
and he certainly had that.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's a fair point. And like I was kind of thinking a marauding guy who plays in midfield and lands in the box quite late, and the recent guy to be doing that is Stuart Armstrong. But we'll see how he gets on, because it's like Armstrong's been great this season, but let's just hope he can keep it.
Aye, but if you compare him to Aitken, who's got better hair?
Whoa, depending on which podcast you speak to, it really depends.
I'm going 70s Aitken. No, I'm talking about the perm.
It's a fair point you make. And see, another thing I noticed as well, looking back, they all had that hair. It was like a mad factory built Barnet. They just like pumped him out of a factory somewhere, this Barnet. It was quite interesting. Like, they all seem to have the same style of hair, but not just the volume as well. And
they all have the same celebration.
I know.
It's just a really awkward two arms up in the air, just kind of running without any purpose.
Chest out. They have the chest.
Aye.
It's like the last modern striker to have that shite one was Alan Shearer.
Aye.
You know, that just like pure throwback, like fucking Roy the Rovers. Anyway, he's a wanker, and we all know that. So he's pushed back. He's actually put into right back to allow Danny McGrain to push forward against a game against Dundee United. As I say, we drew 2-2 with Rangers, which was a really big result for Celtic because we're chasing the title. But we played Dundee United, they're doing quite well. And this was the beginning of him being played in multiple positions. But he didn't play in the final game of the month because he lost his passport while he was in Switzerland on under-21 duty with Scotland. I seemed to come across a lot of these games. There was a lot of international friendlies that were played, but there was no like international break, really. They just sort of happened on like a Wednesday, and Celtic would be playing on a Saturday. So he'd be away on the Wednesday and he'd be back in like the Friday and he'd play on the Saturday. Or even international games would be on the same weekend as league games. So there's a little bit of overlapping, I think.
Yeah, I obviously knew they'd kind of get their act together in terms of organising these things and stuff, but I think back then it was a case of, right, let's have a game next week. And the clubs didn't really have much of a say in it, because playing for your country was probably the biggest thing for most players at the time. It was seen as, international football probably had a bit more importance then, I'd say.
More money.
True.
More money for the players.
Especially Celtic at that time.
Exactly. So in April we started the month a 3-0 convincing win away at Hearts, who were actually looking to be relegated this season. And Aitken scored. I know it's a shambles that. Aitken scored the opener. But then we go to Easter Road chasing a league trophy after we had a bit of a poor season before, and we win 1-0 at Easter Road to win the league at Easter Road, which is Roy's first ever trophy. So that was 1976-77 season. Roy Aitken, I think he's 17. I think his birthday's November 24th. And that's kind of it for that season up until the end, where we have the Scottish Cup final. We beat the Huns. A Stonewall penalty. Have you seen the guy actually fucking picks the ball up? More or
I think
less.
was it no Derek Johnson?
It was Derek Johnson. He literally, that's like, let's just say he literally picks the ball up, and then they surround the ref like they're absolutely furious, more furious than they normally are, and the rest is history.
I wonder how that ref's career went after that.
No shagging goats down the Masons Lodge for a wee while, probably banned. So anyway, that's the end of that season. Roy made 46 appearances, which was the 6th highest in the team. Just to let you know, Celtic are on 40 appearances, 40 games already this season, approximately. Do you know that? As in currently?
No, sorry.
As in like 2016, where we're sitting right this second.
Well, now you mention it, well, obviously with the qualifiers, if you think about it, 6 big games a week. I mean, that's the ridiculous thing about this whole Champions League thing, is that the 6 most important games of the season are within the first month.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I wouldn't have thought so. But it used to only be that type of stuff for like the Intertotal Cup or something like that.
Aye.
And yet we're playing 40 games. But credit to the players for keeping up that level of performance.
Yeah. So the 6th highest performer in the team, 6th highest appearances in the team, scored 6 goals. He's 18, 19 years old. He's won the double. And it was Jock's last major trophy with Celtic, his 25th trophy for Celtic and his last major one. So like the next season is just a disaster. This is the final season before Billy McNeil takes over as the boss. 1977-78. Dalglish refuses to go on tour with Celtic because he's wanting to go to Liverpool. And are you on the set of Aliens or something like that?
No, it's beside the. I live next to a university, so
Right.
they fucking do weird things at weird hours.
So it sounds like you're on the set of Aliens and there's like aliens closing in on you, like metre by metre. But anyway, I'll carry on with the road.
I'm not Brigton, mate.
Right, fair play. Right, so Dalglish ends up leaving. He doesn't go on tour. He kind of goes on strike, as I say. A little bit of friction last season with the treatment of Sean Fallon. Whatever. That's a separate podcast. Dalglish was Celtic's best player, no question. He was the driving force, scored a lot of goals for Celtic, and then he goes. So this season is a disaster. We're just losing games left and right. Roy picks up some injuries. September isn't really much better. We beat Motherwell in a replay of the League Cup from August. We then lose to the Huns. Roy's missing. We lose to the Huns, and 5 of the previous league title winners from the previous season are all fit. They're injured or suspended. We lose to Aberdeen and we beat Clydebank. It's just a really topsy-turvy season. We play SWW Innsbruck in the European Cup next in the round in October. But Tommy Burns is kind of coming into his own a little bit. But it really, like, I'm just trying to sort of condense like all my notes into just saying Celtic were shite, nothing to talk about. But the next game that I'm going to talk about, which was quite instrumental, is that we play Stirling Albion in the League Cup. Danny McGrain gets injured, and he gets injured for quite a long time, and I think it's over a year. Roy Aitken is given the captaincy.
Did he not break his leg?
I never came across that. I know Bobby Lennox broke his leg, but I'm not sure about Danny McGrain. But I know that he got an injury and he doesn't actually feature. I think it's either, well, we're in October, I'm talking about October, and either doesn't come back to the March coming up, which is a wee 6 or 5 months, or it's the March after that. But so I just took it that when he was picked as the vice captain this time, he remained as the captain. So he steps up and scores a goal he's given the captaincy and scores the goal to win the game against Stirling Albion. Do you think you can compare Roy to any modern Celtic players?
One of the comparisons that you kept seeing was Mjällby.
Okay.
That's something that I'd seen quite a lot of people who've seen both players are saying Mjällby, but interesting enough they're saying Mjällby had a lot more talent. Well, again, it's all subjective, but a lot of people are saying stuff like, I think I saw on one of the threads about him, someone was saying like he was like, the way he could change a game was like Roy Keane, and then the next comment was, but with a 20th of the talent, which was quite harsh, but that kind of gives you the kind of idea of the type of player he was. So if you can imagine kind of a mix between Mjällby and Keane, but with none of the with neither of those two's talent.
Yeah. He's a big guy as well, quite an imposing figure on the pitch. Like, he was 6'1", 6'2". He is 6'1". We're talking about him in the past tense as if he's no longer here, but he's a big guy, and I think he, as a physical guy, he pushed Celtic on. But
sorry, but just one thing that I didn't really notice was that. One thing that I noticed was that he didn't score many headers.
Yeah, that's true.
For someone being a centre back, and one of the threads at the time, obviously, you're talking about this is the time of the kind of the reputation of the South for the defence.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got this centre back who's 6'1", and he is quite a physical player, but he isn't renowned for being good with his head.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I never came across any incidents like the goals that I watched. They were all like quite spectacular goals, if anything. Like maybe one tap in, but it was in a big game. So I don't know. He seemed to score long range goals or like volleys and stuff like that. So he was technical as well, but he was quite a versatile guy. And as I say, like he's playing left back, right back, and I think that's a lot of that is down to Jock. Jock was quite an experimental manager. I think he was kind of ahead of his time with that. We spoke about that with the George Connolly one, where he was kind of like, you know, trying players in different positions just to like really, like what we see with Brendan Rodgers now to an extent, playing Calvin Miller tonight, who was a forward or a striker, and he's stuck him at left back just to really like sort of to test the wee guy. But we'll come on to the modern stuff towards the end of the podcast. So we're not doing too well. We lose 3-0 away to home to Innsbruck after winning the first leg 2-1. Andy Lynch gets sent off, but Roy's playing consistently. We're drawing with Rangers. We're losing to various teams, but to be honest, not much is really happening. Celtic are just sort of faltering all the way along. We draw 1 each with Clydebank, which Clydebank were like, they're just one of those yo-yo teams. They're up, they're down, they're up, they're down, they're up, they're down. Tom McAdam scores the goal for us, but the pitch is like a shambles. Like I think we're into November now, and obviously the weather nowadays in Scotland is not as actually cold as it used to be, for various reasons, but in the past it was like the pitch was frozen solids. But Celtic are just really struggling to get going. In December, the weather continues to be really, really bad. We can only play like 1 or 2 competitive games in December because things are just really bad. We beat Dundee United on Christmas Eve to go 5th in the league, so we finish the season to go 5th. We finish the year, rather, to go 5th. I just want to start off in January. January, historically, for any person in life, is normally a shite month, and it kind of applies to how Celtic went on in this season. We lose at 1-0 at home to Motherwell. We then lose to the Huns. We then continue to lose. We had no Burns, McGrain, Doyle, Glavin, Dalglish. But we lose 3-1 to the Huns, but Roy was man of the match for Celtic anyway. But I'm going to stop this season right here because we play 20 games, we win 9 of those 24 draws, the rest are losses. The Huns, Kelly, Hibs, we just keep getting fucking our asses handed to us. Basically, this was the end of Jock Stein as Celtic manager. This was it. All good things must come to an end, and it came to quite an abrupt end. Celtic finished 5th, 19 points behind Rangers. We don't win anything. Roy, though, plays 46 games, he has 3 goals, and he's a vice-captain. So there's the silver lining of Roy. So I'm going to zip through this next one because we've got so much to talk about. 1978-79, Billy McNeil's brought in. John Clark comes in as his assistant. Sean Fallon is no longer employed by Celtic. Billy McNeil's first game, Roy Aitken plays left back, but then he gets shifted to midfield, as you alluded to previously. We played 10 games in the first month. Roy played every single game. He's playing with 2 or 3 different positions. Just he's being asked to play here, there, and I get the impression he's just going, that's fine. Doesn't complain, gets on with it. We beat the Huns 3-1. McNeil's first derby game. We get our arses handed to us by Alex Ferguson's Aberdeen 4-1. Then Roy scores some goals. Bobby Lennox is still on the scene. We're moving to November, but we start to slip. Like, consistency was a real issue back in the day. Like, we don't really seem to hit huge. We don't really seem to get more than 2 or 3 wins in a row. Now, that sounds really spoiled, but like Celtic or Celtic, and even back then we were a big team. We had some of the best players, and like we're winning 2 games, then losing 2, and then drawing 1, then winning 2. That just seemed to be what happened. But in December we lose. I just want to tell you, this is Billy McNeil's first season, 78-79. December we lose 3-2 in the League Cup final, ending a 155 game run without being eliminated. But this month is overshadowed by a youth player of Celtic who died of a brain hemorrhage. His name was Brian McGrain. I never knew about that, but he was only 20 years old. But I just want to say, Roy is being compared to Bobby Evans, who was a Celtic player from the 40s to the 1960s. He had a fantastic hair, a fantastic barnet, and I'm not...
Mm-hmm.
This podcast doesn't really endorse haircuts, but his barnet is second to none. Like, a mad sort of weave, a ginger weave, like wave type buzz. Anyway, it's sensational. He was quite a successful player, part of the team that won the Coronation Cup, which we covered in an earlier episode on the History Bhoys Abroad. But we're still kind of not getting a run together, and games are getting cancelled, this and that. And the only real positive throughout these times is Roy, who is a bit of a heartbeat for Celtic. He's the mainstay, he's the vice captain, he's solid, he's versatile. He's kind of what, as you said, he was kind of a manager's dream. So in March, Danny McGrain returns to the squad, as I previously mentioned. He's been out for quite some time. By the end of the month of March, we've played 22. We're 7th in the league. The Huns are 5 points ahead in 2 games more. But basically everyone except for Celtic have played like more than 24 games. We've got like a 3 or 4 games in hand. So essentially the league was in our hands. All we had to do was win our remaining games, and it was to be quite the season, 78-79. So I'm going to jump forward to April 25th. Celtic 2, Dundee United 1. It's the 8th game of the cup. The 8th game of a cup-free month, because we've been put out all the previous cups, so we're just focusing on the league. The Renaissance could be pointed at Roy McCain. Who the fuck is that? Roy Aitken driving Celtic to beat St Mirren. McGarvey scored against Celtic, and we covered him in episode 14 of this. Then the Bears scored with a minute to go to win the game. And all these games in hand that we've got, as I say, we've got 3 or 4 games in hand because of the backlog of fixtures and all the cancellations. All we need to do is win them. So by April 25th, we're losing 1-0 at half time, but we grind out a result. And again, this is against St Mirren. The Huns are starting to capitulate. They were top of the league, but they're kind of losing their way. And all we really need to do now is win the rest of our games. So we're now second with 5 games in hand and a 5-point deficit. It's quite mad to think you've got 5 games in hand, which is just that's a month's worth of fixtures. But anyway, so we've got 6 league games in May to win the league. And even a loss against Rangers, a 1-0 loss in the first game, we still have the cushion to go on and win the league. We beat St Mirren 2-0 to go top in goal difference. Dundee United and the Huns are underneath us. And then the final game of the season sees us play for the title. This is quite a famous game.
Latchford's claims.
I'm just going to let the audio do the talking.
And Conroy in the middle. And the referee has spotted the foot up there. McDonald's on the deck. Referee speaking to Conroy, and Doyle getting involved needlessly with Alex McDonald. He could be in trouble here. Referee Eddie Pringle going to have a word with the linesman, and Celtic could be handicapped. Johnny Doyle having his name taken by referee Eddie Pringle, and certainly the linesman made the decision for the referee. It looks as if Johnny Doyle will take no further part in this important championship decider. Celtic down to 10 men and trailing by 1-0. 10-man Celtic trying to get back at Rangers. Aitken's been driving them through. Now here's a great chance on the left-hand side of the box. Provan setting up. Aitken again's made a great run into the middle. Roy Aitken there and scoring for Celtic, the equaliser. And it's Celtic 1, Rangers 1. 10-man Celtic still going. A chance here for Aitken. Miss hits it. McCluskey turns and scores for Celtic. Aitken missed, but McCluskey didn't. Rangers have the corner on the left-hand side. Cooper, Edvaldson rising, just getting the touch. Russell, and the shot finds the net. And it's 2 apiece with just 13 minutes left for play. Now McGrain pushing Celtic forward. The ball at the edge of the box. Smith there for Rangers. Aitken claims it. Celtic possession. Aitken going through. A chance for McCluskey. McCluskey going round the outside of 2 defenders. McCloy makes the save, but Jackson diverts it into his own net. Disaster for Rangers. Celtic tails up, going for it now, right in the final minute. McLeod shoots and scores a sensational goal. It's all over. Celtic have won the championship. A magnificent strike from Murdo McLeod. 10-man Celtic are the champions. An astonishing game at Celtic Park. Coming off the ropes not once, not twice, but 3 times to win the championship.
League, covered by St Anthony. He wrote a book about this. I think his name is Stephen Murray. Definitely one to check out. So we beat the Huns in the final day, 4-2. Roy scoring. We win the league. Billy McNeil's first league trophy as manager. 36 games, 13 wins and 48 points. 2 points per game. Not a massive amount, but job done. Roy finished with the most appearances in the entire squad. 48 appearances in 6 goals. He was a monster on the pitch. So
sorry, how old would he be this time? 20? 21?
No, this is 79, so he was born in
59, wasn't he?
I can tell you this, if you stay where you're at. He was born in 58, so he's 21.
58.
21.
That's a feat. I mean, think of how many games he would have got under his belt before he was 21.
Yeah, no, totally. He's as I say, like you learn that he just wasn't a normal player. He just had something. He was a special player. Like a lot of people speak about him recently. You know, he wasn't this, he wasn't that. Not many people, minority, but for me definitely. So 1979-78, Roy gets his first Scotland cap against Peru. Don't ask why we were playing Peru. In August, Roy, I've noticed that never seems to get injured. Throughout this entire time, I've never really noticed that he's been seriously injured. He never gets a serious injury where we are. But jump to September, a couple of classic Celtic myths. I'm not really sure if you've heard of these, but one involves Danny McGrain and his beard in a trip to communist Islamic Albania. Have you heard anything about a myth about this?
No, but communist Islamic?
I'm not even sure. I'm probably going to write this service. It was either one. It doesn't really matter. However,
no. I was just thinking, have you created a new political movement?
Not myself. Like I haven't. Maybe Danny McGrain has it. I mean, if Danny McGrain starts it, I will follow.
If anybody should, it should be him.
I agree. So, like, basically, Partizan Tirana of Albania. We drew them in the European Cup, and apparently beards were banned, and we know that Danny McGrain sports a mighty fine beard. Beards were banned, and the chat was that he would have to shave that or he wouldn't be allowed to play it. I don't think it was entirely true. Also, apparently...
It's true now. It's true now.
It's out there. It's out there. I never started. I'm just passing it on. So, apparently, there's rumours that Celtic were, like, worried about, like, it was an iron curtain. Like, there was, the journalists weren't allowed to travel and stuff like that. So Celtic essentially travelled with, like, their entire squad, and the people that were employed at, like, Celtic Park came along with them and were the journalists. They would feed the stories back to the UK. But Celtic apparently took food with them because they didn't really want to, like, they weren't too sure about what the food was going to be. Like, so individual players took their own food. Danny McGrain, I'm laughing here, brought a loaf, a pack of gammon, and a dozen tea bags.
Still better than what Chris Boyd would have took.
Aye, I know. But Tommy Burns...
Soviet Monster Munch,
Tommy Burns brought a tin of beans and a tin opener. Now, I swear to God, this is lifted straight from the wonderful Celtic Wiki website. If that's a joke, fair play, man. But Tommy Burns with a tin opener, so, I mean, he had a good left foot, so maybe he could have just used that anyway. Who knows? But aye, so, like... The fact
I have a similar story, but I'll leave it for later. But I don't think the Celtic board trusted Russia. But I'll let you continue, and I'll get back to it later.
Fair enough. I'm not sure many Celtic fans travelled to this game for obvious reasons. But we beat them 4-1 at home in the second leg after a 1-0 loss. Roy scored 2 in the return leg to go through. We play 7 games in September, and we win 5. Roy gets a goal against Aberdeen in quite a fiery game. We end the month of September 1st. In October, we beat the Huns, and Roy's just solid in defence. We then beat Dundalk in Europe, kind of our friends in Islands. But the erratic form kind of, as I say, like, we tend to go on a good run and then sort of ruin it by going on a shite run. Between November and December, we never really win 2 games in a row. We get pumped out the League Cup by September. And now we're into 1980, and we start the year with a 1-0 win to go top. There's nothing to mention really. End of February, we're top of the league. Skip forward to March. Roy scored an own goal, unfortunately, and he's been suspended, but he's now performing in midfield as well as in defence. Highlight of the season, being drawn against Real Madrid in the European Cup quarter-final. We're in the European Cup quarter-final. The team to play in the first leg: Latchford, Snedden, McGrain, Aitken, McDonald, McAdam, Provan, McCluskey, Lennox, McLeod, Doyle. We've got Pat Bonner, Lynch, Davidson, Burns and Casey on the bench. We win 2-0. Celtic beat Real Madrid in the European Cup quarter-finals. McCluskey and Doyle.
Now McLeod, space on the far side. Snedden, forward as the extra man, cuts infield, turns it in left-footed, keeper drops it. It's going to be a goal. McCluskey scores, keeper's mistake. Made by Snedden, scored by McCluskey. Celtic lead 1-0, and that is much more like it.
This will probably liven the game up now. Appears short there, but the goalkeeper actually let it come off him. It dipped a little bit in front of him, came off him. McCluskey followed up, and that's Celtic 1-up. Tremendous.
Donald and McAdam got a bit of room there. Lennox hitting it, not far enough. McDonald knocks it in, headed across goal. McCluskey again. No, the referee's giving a free kick. McDonald was the player who got up for it, and it was knocked down towards McCluskey, and the referee gave a free kick. So 15 minutes to play. Over being held, but referee waving play on. Oh, that was the aim for Snedden, but straight to Cunningham. Good recovery by Provan, did well. This is McLeod, Snedden on the right. I don't think McLeod sees him. Yes, he does. Snedden floating it across, in comes Doyle with a header. Oh, it's a goal! It's a goal! Johnny Doyle scores! Again made by Snedden. Oh, what a goal! What a beautiful goal, Johnny Doyle.
Good ball across, and Doyle, who really has been the most unproductive of the Celtic forwards tonight, came in behind two defenders, got in between them, and a powerful header there gave the goalkeeper no chance.
Oh, that was an absolute cracker.
We beat Real Madrid, quite a big result. Real, they had some decent players. Del Bosque, the manager, Juanito Santillana, Laurie Cunningham, who was one of the first black players to play for England, who went from West Brom to Real Madrid, which is kind of unfathomable these days. Laurie Cunningham actually died quite young. A guy that I work with here in Madrid, I guess, he was actually talking about him quite recently and saying, show me all these videos, Spanish guy, pure loves him, quite an older Spanish guy, but loved Laurie Cunningham. But he was telling me that his son owns a pizza place in Madrid. Like he moved to Real Madrid, had quite a decent career in Spain, but died at like 33 in Madrid in a car crash. So there you go.
Yeah. No, I knew it was a car crash. It was, and I'm sure it was in Spain. But no, by all intents and purposes, he was a cracking player.
Aye. So in between the return leg, we're really inconsistent. 2 wins and a draw. Like it's not the most inconsistent, but still. But Real then beat us 3-0. Typical European game, really niggly, lots of fouls. But still, we played Real Madrid in the quarter-finals of the European Cup, which is kind of the last foray into the business end of the season. In Europe for quite some time, maybe even not until Martin O'Neill comes in, which just to think about how long that is a terrifying prospect. But in April we bounced back to the top of the league. We beat Hibs 4-0 and Roy puts in a great performance. And also against the Huns 1-0, we beat them on the 2nd of April. We then continued quite well until we get pumped 5-1 off Dundee United and Aitken scoring the only goal, but we finished second to Aberdeen. The season finale in May was a beezer. We beat the Huns in the Scottish Cup final 1-0 to win the Scottish Cup with an extra time winner from George McCluskey. But this is more famous for the riot that broke out. There was a riot on the pitch. Like this is when this was quite a watershed moment for Scottish football. Like riot cops took to the pitch. Celtic fans were on celebrating. This sounds familiar, by the way. This is going to sound familiar. Celtic fans are on chanting and cheering, and you see the footage of Rangers fans just storming the pitch, throwing bottles and like throwing fists up. But I'm going to let the audio do the talking for this one.
Headed away by Dawson, kicked back by Snedden, and headed by Versailles. McGrain, an astonishing goal by McGrain. Danny McGrain has scored. McGrain hit the ball there, finally deflected off McCluskey. McCluskey getting the final credit. There he is, right in the middle of your picture. Watch it again. Out it comes to McGrain. He volleys it forward. A flick there by McCluskey, well away from McCloy, and McCluskey has scored the goal, which could very well be the winner in this Scottish Cup final.
And indeed, it proved to be the winning goal, and so Celtic made up for the disappointment of not winning the league championship, and it was Danny McGrain who took the trophy. But it was soon after this that the big troubles began at Hampden Park yesterday, and Alex Cameron again takes up that story.
So that's it, the end of the season. Roy, 52 games, some amount of games has to be said, and 5 goals. Charlie Nicholas is now into the next season, 1980-1981. We've been having a bit of trouble with strikers lately since Dalglish left. It's quite a void to fill, but Charlie Nicholas is about to sort that out. The team that season, with Frank McGarvey as well, who signed in March. Charlie Nicholas, Dom Sullivan, Tom McAdam, Peter Latchford, Pat Bonner, Roy Aitken, Willie Garner, Tommy Burns, Mark Reed, Frank McGarvey, George McCluskey, Danny McGrain, Davy Provan, Murdo McLeod, Johnny Doyle, Mike Conroy, and Frank. And August comes and goes. Roy never seems to get injured. We beat a Hungarian side 6-0. The thing that's most famous about these ties is that Billy McNeil, this is when Billy McNeil offers a square go to Jerry McNee. Jerry McNee takes him up on it, steps outside and gets put in his arse. I don't know if you knew that, but apparently that happened.
I did, aye. And then I think he hated Celtic ever since.
Aye. I think he was a Celtic guy as well. I think he was.
He was? No. Like, from what I've read, he definitely was, but
yeah.
Just one of those self-loathing Celtic fans, always.
Yeah. Aye, so September, we beat Hearts 2-0, but Roy gets a sending off. He gets red carded, 2 yellows, but he gets quite a large suspension. He plays domestically in the League Cup, in the Scottish Cup, and European Cup Winners' Cup, but he's not playing really in the league because he's suspended. But we play against a team from Timisoara, Polytechnica Timisoara from Romania, another Iron Curtain weekend away. We win the coin flip when we're playing in Romania. Like, we toss the coin and we get to choose everything, but the referee just decides, nah, they're going to do the kick-off and you are going to play there. And they sort of went with it. And then the team who Celtic were winning 2-1 from the first leg, they were playing loud music throughout the entire match. It's really fucking weird.
Really?
Aye, so McDonald and McGarvey get sent off. Really, really controversial game. Romania was a communist regime. Hardly anybody went. Just sounds like a really shite game, shite trip, shite holiday, shite experience. Apparently the referee was fighting with Frank McGarvey after the game, like in the press office as well. But so Roy's missing in the league. Charlie Nick, steps up and starts going on a wild scoring run. But Roy's back and scores 2 own goals in October. I'm pretty sure. No, sorry, I'll take that back. Roy's back in October. We win 2-0 and it's 2 own goals. We're gifted 2 own goals against St Mirren. So we start to pick it up a little bit, but then in November we lose to the Huns. Roy is now starting to play as a defensive mid, and Aberdeen are routinely beating Celtic throughout this point. I explained before, Alex Ferguson's in charge, but Roy, I have to say, I went through every single, much to my brain's detriment, I went through every single Celtic wiki profile of every single game to see if Roy Aitken played, and he did more or less every single game. I'm talking hundreds of games here, so this is a painstaking effort we're going to here. So we're into December, and I'm actually going to go straight to the new year and a change of form. 5 wins, 5 games in January. A solid run, something that we haven't really done in my research thus far. Roy plays every game in defence with Tom McAdam. Tom McAdam was also an auxiliary striker and occasionally played up front for Celtic when called upon, and Pat Bonner is now the number 1 choice goalkeeper. 3 games in February, 3 wins, fortunes are on the up. We're hitting the form at the right time. Roy scores a great goal in the 3-1 dismantle of the Huns. Very confident performance. A marauding run. He roasted defender, pace, power, and that's the one we spoke about earlier on. A marauding run into the box and sort of slots it away. I'll continue. Celtic go from January to April 15th unbeaten domestically. We hand out some doons along the way. 7-0 against St Mirren, a standout. We beat Thistle 4-1 and we beat Hearts 6-0. And he's scoring goals. Dundee United then beat us in the Scottish Cup. Dundee United and Aberdeen are essentially, I don't know, the Hearts and the Aberdeen of now, I guess. Hearts and Aberdeen give us games now, but back then they were even more powerful. but our recent form has carried us to the brink of winning the league, and only goal difference now can stop us. So basically, we win that league. We basically go to Rangers and we beat Rangers at Ibrox, and we haven't won the league, but it's going to take some wild goal difference for us to lose the league. And we go to the next game. I should point out, it was a 1-0 game, I think, and Charlie Nicholas scored the goal at Rangers. And Rangers was the stadium was under construction, which is also another familiar tale. The stadium is under construction and it's an absolute mess. There's wee guys, like you can see, like mounds of rubble just outside the stadium, and there's just like crowds sitting on it. But then it's not until we go to Dundee United away to win the league 3-2. We beat them 3-2 to win the league on April 22nd. McLeod, McGarvey and Burns. But after that, the last game of the season, the final game of the season, we actually lose to St Mirren. So after winning the league and doing all the hard work, we then lose. But fair enough. Next interesting thing.
I think so. Just go back to that Dundee United game. I think was it Burns? One of the goals is an absolute peach.
Aye.
I think it's like curled into the top corner or something like that. It's like a fantastic goal.
Yeah. Burns. I'm pretty sure Burns got Player of the Year. It might have been this year. Burns got Player of the Year. Obviously, Charlie Nicholas is hovering around. But I've got some questions to ask you in a minute about this sort of a couple of things regarding Celtic players and like why we don't really bring players like this through anymore. But the last thing, two more things about this season before I go on to my next one. Celtic play in Morocco, the first time we've ever played. I don't think we've ever played in Africa since, but we play against against a Moroccan select. We actually lose the game. I think McGarvey scores the goal. We lose 2-1, but I couldn't find Roy's stats for this season, but it's the best football of his career. He's scoring goals in big games. He's well relied upon. We struggle when he's missing. He's consistent, although we are slightly inconsistent, and he has another league medal. So, I want to ask you a question, and we can move on after this, but why do you think no one came in to buy him?
Very good question, actually. I think it was just a time where there wasn't that many transfers as there is these days. Obviously, you get players like Nicholas and stuff like that, and they get that buzz, and then it's obvious that Celtic aren't going to be able to keep them. But not many players. Obviously, there's not really freedom of contract as well. Very good question. I have no idea, especially because this was a time where basically every English team had one or two Scots in them.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Perhaps his head was never turned. Perhaps he just maybe like Adam McGrain. At this point in his career, his head was never really turned.
Yeah. Sometimes you just get players that are just never. There's no real clamour for them. Like Griffiths has done really, really well for Celtic. There's not really been any transfer chat. Scott Brown has done relatively well for Celtic. You know, he's a captain. He's won a lot. Regardless of what you say about him, like on paper, he's won a lot. There's never really been any clamour for him. I guess it's just what they instruct their agent or their management to tell like the other teams. I guess they just have a "don't bother me" sign up or something like that. But I don't know. Who knows? If anyone knows, they can let us know what they think. Why players tend to just stay with Celtic even after they've performed exceptionally well. There's no rumours. There's no transfers. But I want to finish this season quite fast, and then we'll get you started. 1981-82, we're playing rapid friendlies all over the world. Our title defence starts well with a 5-2 win over Airdrie. In fact, September we play 6 and win 5. We play Juventus in the European Cup. They've got Liam Brady, Zoff, Tardelli, Gentile. Murdo McLeod scores to win 1-0 at Parkhead, but then we get beat away. But we also beat the Huns in this month, so it's quite a decent start to the month. Juventus. October, our form is solid. We go almost unbeaten from now in October until the new year, and Roy is always there. October 18th is to be remembered as the month. Sorry, October 1981 is the month when Johnny Doyle died under really unfortunate circumstances. There was some sort of it's an accident. I don't really want to go into it too much, but he came across as a jinky character, like similar sort of position, similar sort of character. You know, kind of a live wire. Could drag Celtic by the scruff of the neck, and it seemed to put a bit of a damper on Celtic. He was only 30 years old, but apart from that, like on a positive, Celtic were absolutely brilliant. We played one competitive game in December because of the weather. The weather is a lot colder, obviously. January 3 competitive games, a few friendlies. We lose 1-0 to the Huns away, but it's our first real game in nearly 5 weeks. And the suggestion that the time out from these games has made the players quite rusty is probably true. I should point out, throughout this time, Paul McStay's introduced and he's like starting to command the game. He's sort of like controlling football matches, age 17. February, some shite form. We play a game where the floodlights fail and the referee plays on anyway. So that's just fucking wild, really.
In February?
I'm going to imagine it was a Saturday afternoon game. If it's during the day, I mean, fair enough. If it's an evening game, obviously that's impossible. Like, the problem they have these days is health and safety.
Right. Well, that's the thing. So I just like looking through, and again, like kudos to the Celtic Wiki because it really is the fountain of all knowledge for us. But some of the reports you see, I was looking when I was looking at one of the Old Firm games that he played in. There was 150 arrests. Said just it wasn't seen as a shame game. There was no summit. It was just that was 150 arrests, and that was kind of part of the course. Then, I mean, so many things that nowadays, like there'd be an inquiry and stuff like that. Whereas back then it was just that's football.
Let's get on with it. So as I say, like we had that riot one that we listened to earlier on, where like you watch it, it's like a Game of Thrones. It's like a scene from Game of Thrones. It's like cunts on horseback clubbing people and bottles getting lobbed. But anyway, so Roy is suspended or injured briefly. He returns on March 20th, and we win a game 2-0, but the press are just like, oh, well, it wasn't a good 2-0 game, and they're sort of slagging Celtic for only beating Airdrie 2-0 at home. It's like, oh, well, you won and you're doing really well, but you never actually beat them by enough, which is just incredible, really. We lose to Aberdeen, who are our biggest rivals, which meant we had to beat Dundee United at Dundee, in Dundee, to maintain a league charge. A 2-0 win and a double from Tommy Burns, who is the player of the year, as I mentioned earlier. So basically, at the end of the month, we're top of the league. David Moyes is also in the team on occasion. Let me just see here, other notes that I've got. We beat the Huns 2-1 thanks to Tom McAdam and Danny Craney, who's another player who comes into Celtic. Quite a bright spark. McAdam played in defence, but now he's playing as a striker. I mean, this is a question, and we'll just get a quick answer. Why do you think Celtic are bringing through less youngsters now compared to how it was even up until 20 years ago? Why is everything bought in?
Well, I think we're going in the right direction. I've seen today there was like 3 or 4 players in the academy playing today, obviously with Miller being in there. But I think it's just the way the game's went. It's a lot more globalised. Like Celtic can go watch Izagiri playing for a Hunt. Well, did we sign him from a Honduran team? I think we did, didn't we?
We signed him from
we can scout players from all around. It's just a lot easier to find these players now. Mixed that as well with the fact that I think that from what I can see, the Celtic Academy is actually fairly well run. And if you're good enough, you will make it through. I think Tierney's an example of that. Yeah. But I'd say like it was more a necessity back then. You just kind of had to go with what you had, and that was the same for all teams in Scotland. So you couldn't really, obviously when the first teams, and the Huns probably one of the first ones to really do it, starting importing players in. Then the need to be better kind of took hold. Yeah. And you couldn't just bring in 11 players for your reserve team. You had to go out and make sure they were of decent enough quality.
Yeah, fair point. And I agree. I think it is a globalisation thing, and the world being probably a more peaceful place these days, where you can go and pick players up from places like Honduras, and the scouting networks are wide and stuff. But anyway, that's another conversation. So at this stage, Roy's getting described as a devastating attacker, a doughty defender. Great Aitken is the top man. Now, we're in 81-82 season, and I'm just going to explain that Celtic were basically, they were given the chance to win the league against Dundee United. All we had to do was beat them, but we lost 3-0 at home. And Aberdeen, who we are going back and forward with Aberdeen, they're our rivals. They we are winning on goal difference, and they need to win by 5-0 against Rangers, and they're 4-0 up at half time. Celtic, on the other hand, are 0-0 at home to St Mirren. Luckily, Aberdeen finished 4-0, and then obviously at half time, Celtic are like, what the fuck's going on? We've not scored. We eventually win 3-0. Jaws McCluskey scores 2. Billy McNeil, aged 42, 2 in a row. That's Roy now. I think that's him got 4 leagues, aged 24. So I'm not really sure of the stats. I'm just going to zip through the final year that I've got here. It's not too long, and I want to say that I appreciate everyone listening, because it's a 15-year career we're talking about here. I think this is going to be split up into 2 episodes, into 2 podcasts. Anyway, 1982, 1983. Frank McGarvey, Tommy Burns, Dom Sullivan, Mike Conroy, George McCluskey, Graham Sinclair, Tom McAdam, David Moyes, Bonner, Peter Latchford, Roy Aitken, Charlie Nick, Paul McStay, Davy Provan, Murdo McLeod, Danny McGrain, Mark Reed, Danny Craney. A lot of talent, Gary. A lot of talent, has to be said, in that squad.
Yeah.
Just players that go on and either have a great career elsewhere, or players who were solid for Celtic. But August is a League Cup month, and we beat every single team and win every game, and we go on a fantastic run until the 9th of October before we lose a game. Before we lose a game in any competition. We actually beat Ajax, who had Cruyff and Van Basten in their ranks, over 2 legs to play against Sociedad. Sociedad game was quite an interesting one. We spoke about it. I think it was the Frank McGarvey episode of the History Boys. Celtic flew the Basque flag above Celtic Park. The Basque flag is, if you haven't seen it, is all red with it's like a reverse Union Jack, but with red, green and white. Red, green and white. But the red is the prominent colour, and Celtic fans actually thought it was a Union Jack, and were obviously heavy pissed off. But Roy is now scoring quite a lot. Sociedad end up putting us out anyway, but he's scoring quite a few goals here. He's consistently in the team. I've put in bullet points, like massive notes here. Roy, every time I look, he's there. We end October, beat the Huns 3-2, and McStay shines like a lighthouse, in italics, of course. According to Billy McNeil, McStay is obviously, he goes on to have a great career, but he's like 17 or 18 now. This is when sort of murmurings of discontent, which seems to be the Celtic way, are kind of in the background. The board are not giving money to Billy financially. It's a question that I don't know if there's an answer, but why do you think we've always had issues with the board? There's always been a consistent thing.
I think it's probably more of a rebellious support that just don't really take away authority. Obviously, based on, obviously that's where the club came from, yeah. But just as well in support the feeling that the people running things are not really looking out for you, and I think that's still rightly or wrongly goes on to this day.
Yeah.
I think there's always that, and also the fact that traditionally our board have been tight bastards.
Yeah, yeah,
and especially in this type of era and stuff like that as well. And even before, it was a lot of it's kind of some form of like nepotism, whereby it's just the same families that are like the Whites and the Kellys and stuff like that.
Yeah,
are just owning it and not really looking out for what's best for the team, more looking out for what's best for themselves.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. That's another question that could completely be expanded onto a full conversation, but we can touch on that another time for sure. So November to December we win every league game and are good value for another title. As I say, Sociedad put us out, but in the League Cup we are doing quite well. Roy scores a trademark, I'm going to call it a trademark, running, driving with the ball goal and a long range finish to beat St Mirren 5-0. Teams are just getting scalped. They're being dispatched. We beat the Huns 2-1. Charlie Nicholas, now the star, he's now scored. It's in November, and he's got 30 goals so far. Top of the league.
Jeez.
And without going too far into this part of the season, this is one of the closest leagues finishes I've seen in Scotland. 1 point separated the eventual winners. I think the winners were Celtic. Well, 1 point separated Celtic, Dundee United and Aberdeen. And then fourth place was like 6 or 7 or even 10 points after that. Celtic, while we were absolutely destroying teams, we just couldn't keep up with Dundee United, and Aberdeen put us out the Scottish Cup. So we don't win anything this season. we even go top of the league in April with 6 games left, but we were undone by another home loss to Dundee United, and that was it. The league was finished. Our final game, though, we do go to Ibrox and beat the dead cunts 4-2, and Charlie Nick said goodbye for the first time, and that's kind of it. That takes me up to kind of where you are. I just want to say, like, the thing that I found about Roy Aitken was just Mr. Consistent. So the podcast overran. It's much longer than we anticipated, but it was 15 seasons of Roy Aitken. So episode 19, part 1, is going to be this. And following the music, you are going to hear us talking about tonight's match against Partick Thistle. And 1983 to 1990, Roy Aitken will follow on episode 19 of the History Bhoys Abroad, part 2, in the next day or so. Cheers. Celtic chat. Tonight's game against the friendly faces of Partick Thistle, Ziggy Gordon's stupid face and stupid hair. The chat before the game was mainly about rotation, and that did sort of happen, but I expected a little bit more. Calvin Miller, Liam Henderson, Gamboa remains. What did you think?
I thought it was a good test. I think Thistle came in to their credit. They didn't just sit in. They came out and tried to play a bit of football with Celtic Park, which you've got to give them credit for. I know that they're at the bottom, and that might be part of the reason why. But no, overall, I think we done what we needed to do. It's a difficult time of the year. There's a lot of games, but I think we've just been getting those results, and that's all that matters. I think we were good money for a win, but I was thinking that as long as we kept missing chances, we could let them in. But thankfully they squandered the few chances that they did have.
Seems to be quite a recent thing where we're kind of struggling to break teams down. It seems almost like when we're at home, that's like Hamilton. We kind of didn't score as well as we should have, and Dundee had a chance at the end to make it 2 each at the weekend. It just seems like that the sparkle's gone, but at the same time we're churning out results. There's a lot of hunger, a lot of desire, and even with the rotation, it's just flexing our muscles a little bit. Patrick Roberts, what's your thoughts on him? Because I'm kind of in two minds about Patrick Roberts.
I like him. I think obviously he's been here for around about a year now.
That's a year. That's a year.
Yeah, he came January. His first 6 months were a lot better than his second, obviously. But I think he's got everything in his locker. I really like how he stands up defenders and just attacks them. Doesn't matter if it's 2 or 3. I think it's something in his game that he's still young, so he needs to know when to pass it off. He's very one-footed, and he does overplay it sometimes. But overall, I really like him.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of. I would prefer a kind of blend of a player between him and Forrest. I know that's asking a lot and it's costing a lot. Forrest is more direct. He's more passive, I guess, for want of a better word. He would rather beat a man. He would rather slow down and beat the man than slow him down and beat him again, much like Messi does, although Messi can do it. But for me, he just kind of frustrates, and he should really be, if he's at the level people say he's at, he should be doing more. Dembele, again, kind of sort of jaded, but it's, as we spoke about, 44 games by the end of December. Bigger fish to fry coming up. January transfer windows round the corner. Regarding the rotational thing, do you think there's anything in the fact that Rodgers is maybe trying players out just to put them in the view of the transfer window, just to say, this is your chance, if you're not in, this time you're going out in January. Do you think there's anything in that?
I don't personally. I think the players that he's using now. I mean, it's it's hard to tell. I think Rodgers will know in his own head who needs to go. It'll probably be the ones that have basically been bombed out. We can see that way. In fact, Commons has went on loan, and I think he knows he's got like around 17 to 20 players that he has been using, and he's been coming in and out of the team. What I do like is the fact that it does seem like there's a path for certain players to get back in, whereas I didn't feel that under Dial. I felt Dial had a bloated squad, and there was too many people there, and they weren't really motivated. Whereas I think Rodgers just went, right, you four, piss off over there, and he's working with a smaller group, but under the assumption that if you play well enough, you'll get back in. I think you've seen that way with Griffiths in recent weeks and so on. So I think that's good. I think that's good management from him, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the belief that he just sticks with a core of players. Like Rodgers has he knows who he wants and who's going to be here. I think players like Mackay-Steven will have the stay of execution until the summer, but I don't see him making it. But other players have just not been given a crack. Like Chifty, I'm not suggesting he should be, but I don't know. I'm just kind of flying in the face of your opinion, I guess, with O'Connell, Boyata. Certain players are just not getting a game now, but transfer window is going to be really intriguing to see what he does, because the idea is always the transfer window in January is always more important for Celtic, because we're always thinking about 6 months. Already we're thinking like to the qualifiers, like straight away. Like even now you're thinking, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? How are we going to get through? Who do we need? And I think January is quite important, and I'm pretty sure Rodgers has already said he will be bringing people in January. But I reckon the way it is now, this mad crazy fixture run, it's more about the points than the actual performances. The performances aren't terrible by any means, but like the points first and foremost, and knocking the treble out the park would be my ultimate goal this season.
No, of course. In terms of January, I think what we've got now is more than enough to see us through the season. I do get what you're saying about getting players in with a view to the qualifiers, but what I would say is that I just don't know if the board will. Well, two things really. I don't think the board would be happy just paying players for the 6 month, where the league's basically already wrapped up and so on. And also, I'm not sure the type of players you can get in January. A lot of the time but saying that, for us, it tends to be the cast-offs anyway. So from the bigger leagues anyway. So I think he might bring in 1 or 2 players, but probably might even be players that he's worked with before. I think he might be a fan of that, just knowing certain players that he can trust and so on.
I mean, I think when we're in January, we're looking at leagues that have actually finished already, like the Scandinavian leagues. We brought in Lustig in January before. We brought in Johansson in January, but also the American league, and we're linked with this Darlington Nagbe guy who was at the Man City game, was it, or the Barca game? I can't remember. But anyway, he's one that's I think something will happen to him. One good thing about Celtic just now is that the transfer business is sort of like quite hush-hush, and it's all kept indoors, although team news getting leaked is a concern. Like the Calvin Miller thing was out last night, on Monday, the Calvin Miller news. So, but I think someone like Darlington Nagbe, who's at an American international central midfielder, has won a couple of trophies in America, is the sort of guy that they will try to bring in, sell on value, plus the American thing, like trying to appeal to the American fans. But it's interesting times for Celtic. We've obviously got Hamilton away on Saturday on Christmas Eve, followed by Ross County, and then obviously the Zombies. So good times ahead. Anything you want to add?
Not really. Just big shout out to yourselves and Roy Aitken for a pleasurable podcast. It's my pleasure to actually sit here and work on that, and I just hope we've done the big man justice.
Yeah, excellent. So thank you very much.
Cheers, Donny.
That was me and BK on Atlantic. Never looked both ways, ran in traffic. Pops went away, but I stayed vagrant. Place where the steel and cement became nature. Look what you did with the place, it looks gorgeous. Cityscape where the blood of good men courses. And the dreamers of bull trapped the porcelain. Take a knee to the gods and get horse shit. Wanna live with a thrill, they'll arrange it. Got a bevy of imps to spit hatred. Shit'll get in your head and cause panic. Have you desperately begging to get famous. Get your dignity dirty and left orphaned. Sanity on the fringe of distorted. Who are they to just take shit and hoard it? Who am I that I don't get my portion? The most impressionable minds get molested and informed by manipulating forces. Don't fret, little man, don't cry. They can never take the energy inside you were born with. Knowing that, understand you can never be poor. You already won the war, you were born rich. You can only take the energy you have going back to the ground where the home of your Lord is. Whoever, whatever that Lord is, couldn't give a fuck if you ever made fortunes. Fuck anyone ever trying to run that bump shit. Send it to the flames where the orcs live. Damn, and the lost minds thinking they're smarter than us. Don't understand love's importance. And we can weaponize that, bring it back to the truth where the ashes and dust got formed in.